Well, good evening, everyone. There we go. Good evening. Ah, such is life. Nothing ever wants to cooperate the way it's supposed to. Gonna do another one of these little lidded bowls as my dry center falls to the ground. I do have a center mark on that side. Yes. I don't have one on this side, so I'll just pop one on there just for the sake of because we can. Just so we get close. I guess I have it on that side, so I don't need to worry about that side. And we'll try out our new mallet. Now I found out today I got to make another one. Well, good evening, Al. How are you tonight? Trying to stay warm in this lovely weather we're having? Yeah, do we have any sharp tools? I turned just a couple tops yesterday. So I think the rest of this stuff should still be sharp. I think. This piece of Bradford pear again. This is one of the last pieces that I have cut so far. Definitely looks like maybe it has moved a bit in the center part there, which is the problem we had with the other piece that I had like this, that's still upstairs. Sort of finishing up when it's drying. Clean the face shield a little bit so I can actually remotely see what we're doing. And first things first, start out slow. Bring up a bit of speed. Actually, I think I did this backwards. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like right now we seem to be getting quite a bit of cold weather. Yeah, that'll work. And just drive that in with the tailstock enough to drive it. All I want to do is clean up this face. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Splinter right on that daggone bark. Huh. Kind of unusual thing to get stuck by a splinter there, but certainly did. So what we're going to do, look over to there. It's going to need to be back over there. A little further. It needs to move a little bit. Get my ugly face out of the middle of it. There we go. So we're going to start down here. Change my mind. I'm not going to worry about truing up the outside. How are you doing tonight? I could have drilled this and put a wood worm screw on it. Would have been one way, maybe an easier way. I don't use the wood worm screws that often myself. I don't know why. I mean, I'm not really opposed to them. I just like doing it a little differently. All I did was speed up the face, sink it down a little bit. And actually, I could do it. Could use a parting tool. Could also use my spindle gouge. I'll create a tenon down here. Make sure we have enough area for the chuck jaws. Hard part is to try and see. Looks like I got it going the wrong direction. Do want it to be a little dovetailed. And then just get rid of everything else. Put the chuck on and go right straight to the chuck. Like I say, you could do that with the wood worm screw, but I don't. That face on there was not very flat. So if I put it on a worm screw, and that's sort of always been my hang up with them. You have nice flat material, which for me is kind of a very seldom kind of thing. Most of the time they're cut with a chainsaw. So you end up getting vibration out of them. So I don't really want that. So one extra little step in the process is just creating a flat surface. And I just went in there and created a tenon. So now I can grab it right straight away from the tenon. And in all reality, this edge up here is already trued up, sort of, so to speak. Now we can go from there. Can true up our outside a little bit. And just because we can, we might as well bring the tailstock up for the moment. And then we can true up the outside. Get back to my bowl gouge. I'm really only interested in about the top inch or so. If we change something, I'm going to slow the speed down. Bring our speed back up. We will get a little vibration out of this because it's not very... it allowed me to go through it. We don't need to go crazy fast. I'm just going to be more concerned about the top inch or so. Even though I probably will curve that in anyhow. If little bites move off the end, it won't tear things up so much. Not that it matters because that's the bottom anyhow. And we'll get rid of the tailstock. Now we're lacking in any real vibration. So we'll come back and true up this bottom. That way we'll have all of our faces trued up. Tool rest is a bit high. We're unable to get to the middle without dipping the tool down, and we're not going to do that. And the chuck that's on there is the size jaws that we're going to use. Or the size foot, anyhow, put it that way. So I'll mark that a while. We're going to need that. Now we'll get rid of our trusty corner. Bradford Bear did not like going in that direction. Stood the end grain up like crazy. Okay, that's right. It's morning time for you people, evening time for us. We'll get rid of some corner. Bad thing. Move the tool rest when it's running. Not supposed to. Should stay away from. I know. So there's our foot. It looks probably it's probably about a good size for it, I think. So we'll just give it a little tiny bit of a dovetail. I sort of have gotten away from a little bit gotten away from the ones. A lot of times I do the a bead on there. That's actually OBS that's doing that, and the noise canceling mic in both cases. But OBS will do it for you. Noise canceling mic definitely makes it better. So we'll clean up this bottom. Mm, what scraper do I have? Yeah, well, the mic that I use is one of the Rode mics. They're not cheap. I will tell you that much. But it does a really good job. I really don't, for the most part, I don't really have to mess around much in OBS. Actually, I can get, if I change some of the settings in OBS, you wouldn't even hear, eliminates a little bit too much where you wouldn't hear any of the noise of the cutting or the lathe. But this is what I use. So we'll switch over to our scraper. We'll just straighten up this bottom. Go in here and touch up that corner while we're at it. Move the tool rest too high. Kind of gotten used to the thing of just a simple bottom on them. Simple base. Makes life easier. And it should be tapered inwards. Just a little whisker cut off there, make sure. And I might as well check it while I'm at it. Just to make sure, because I don't want to have to, I'm not going to come back to this. It's plenty. Except to sand a little bit in there. Because I know I'm not going to be able to get my gouge into that corner. Not that that'll be the final shape, but if all things go well, it should be. Be nice and clean, hopefully. This Bradford pear does turn very, very nicely. I will give it that. And we probably, I sort of kind of got stuck on these things of doing a little bit of a curl in at the top. This is something I saw somebody else do in a demonstration. That would look kind of nice, different. So let's sort of make that shape first. I'm going to need the sweatback bow gouge rather than the other one that has straight wings on it, because this will allow me to make a curve, or at least some of the curve, and see where I want the curve to go. I'm thinking my line was about 3/4 of an inch down, which I think that was maybe a bit ambitious for it. By the looks of it. Just nice little light shearing cuts going back across there. Hopefully should leave it clean. It did. That's always a plus. Now we could leave, we're not going to though. Let's see, we could leave a band in the middle and do a little decoration there too, but first things first. Get it to the shape that we want, and then we'll decide what we're going to do there. You can simply leave it sort of a sharp edge. Can you hear the wheels grinding in there, trying to figure out whether I like that or not. I don't like that. That's some torn grain right there. I gotta take a little bit more off of it anyhow. I think I might just leave it like it is. I think I'll just blend everything together simply with the scraper rather than fighting with the bowl gouge. I mean, there's never, not really, I shouldn't say fight with it. But I definitely can make a nice clean curve. Probably easier with the scraper than I can the gouge anymore. Although it wasn't as nice as what we did. It's all about the less sanding, the least amount of sanding. At least that's my opinion. I can take them a couple extra seconds to make the shape right. There's definitely still some ridges. They're not horrible, so I don't. That becomes an issue of. I watched the guy in the demonstration. Now he would sit here and play with that for a while, but the bottom line is I'm going to sand it anyhow. So is there really much point looking for torn grain? Well, there's a tiny little bit down there. Not really torn. It's just kind of lifted it up a little bit. So if we go in here and do a little bit of the shear scraping to it, can't feel it. I should be able to, we'll be able to see it. Go on. So, no time like the present. It's kind of a nice, simple way of being able to do some of this. I don't always work with dry wood, so I don't always have this opportunity to go in here and be able to sand, especially these areas here. Get rid of the sharp edge. Be able to get in tight up against the tenon, because the rest of it I'll power sand. The first was 180 and we'll go to 220. 320. And then we will just grab the drill. And this will be the 2 3/8 sandpaper. Could probably use 3 maybe, but this will work. Should work just fine. Small piece. And we'll also go in reverse. Reverse helps me with the dust collection. Um, going to a symposium the end of the month. These pads that I got, this is actually another retired UPS guy that I met many, many years ago. These little interface pads are actually quite old. They're kind of starting to lose their Velcro gripping ability. It didn't quite stick the way it was supposed to there. That's sort of my goal anymore, is to be able to stay away from like 120 grit. Probably could even start it higher than that, higher than 150, maybe. I'm not going to get too wrapped up about the very base in there where I do stand by hand, because I'm not sure that I have my tent for that perfect size, that it's not going to leave marks. If it don't, that's great. If it does, then I have to go back in and either recut a little bit, resand a little bit. Like I said, I'm not getting super carried away. I will get the majority of it. It doesn't take very long. But to keep in mind that very top edge up here where that curve comes around is very sharp right at the moment. especially with sanding on it. We'll go to the last one we're going to do there at 400. And you can see a definite line down in there where it's not sanded as well as it should be. But that'll be good enough for the moment. Sound verify though. A couple little scratch marks here and there, but I will go back and hand sand this before I finish it with a little bit of either 600 or 800. Little circles. The tiny little scratches that I see will disappear in that fashion. And we'll see whether we did things right. End grain facing the ceiling. That's going to leave marks. Pretty sure. Yep. I still don't have them calipers set quite exact enough. I have probably about an eighth of an inch there, eighth of an inch gap, which still leaves teeny tiny little marks down in that base. Which is okay, I guess. Now, we should be able to sand that curve. Let's try going forward first rather than backwards. Let's see if we can do it with 180. And we'll just use sort of the outside corner of the pad. Looks like it's doing what it needs to do. Doesn't necessarily want to zip up over the top. And starting to lose my curve. Left it with a little less of a sharper edge than I wanted when I did that. I'm just going to go back and sort of sharpen it up a little bit. I want it to be a sort of a real crisp transition. I don't want it to be sharp, but I wanted it a little bit crisper than what it was. I think we achieved that. So now we can hog out the middle. And I shouldn't need dust collection for that. Dust collection does interfere with the noise canceling because it's a little bit louder. It has a tendency to interfere with that a bit. So now we're strictly over here. So let's go over to there. Move this around a bit. And we'll go from there. So we'll get back up to our speed. Probably should start right here. Float that in a bit. Maybe I will put the dust collection back on. Looks like this, since it is dry wood, it's going to be a little dusty, maybe. I have to get rid of a little bit more material underneath them. This sort of gets a bit of an undercut. It's that we will do with the straight wing. Still 60 degrees, it just has straight wings rather than the difference between the two. One swept back, the other one is straight. Still 60-degree nose angle, has a very small bevel on it, only about an eighth of an inch long, which will allow it to cut extremely clean. So we'll start getting back under it. So nice and slow. We will get a nice clean cut in there. Can't touch it while it's running though. It will be very sharp. A tendency anymore not to make these so thin. That way, I mean, this is something you would expect somebody to use. Still need to go back in that direction a little bit more. It's a nice thickness right there, but as soon as I start in, it gets thicker and thicker. It just can't go down very far because the curve is going to come around on it pretty quickly. Looks like I probably need to give myself some room to move. So I'll take a little bit more of this thing. Keeping the support. I'll reach way over downtown. I know my big fat hands are in the way, but not a whole lot I can do about that. I think that feels good enough for the room. This is one of the things that I try and teach the people that I'm doing the classes with, is trying to make this right before we move on, or at least something you're happy with in that situation. The other thing I'm going to do, probably easiest done with a parting tool, is we're going to make this up here at the top sort of a straight section for a little ways. Um, one or two more cuts. I'll pick up my cut right at that transition point and make the sweep from there. This is going to get a lid on it, so having a reasonably straight walled section will help. And I probably should have picked the other one. Yes. One of them I used to do some of the tops yesterday. So this one is freshly sharpened. The thing would help if I move the tool rest around a little bit, even though I'm going to work more off the end. It's going to give me a little bit more security, a little bit better place for the tool to sit, because the tool's way over here. Can't necessarily see how far it takes to get in there, but quite a ways. My focus is down at about 5 or 6 o'clock down in this area. And I'm leaving ripples. But once I get more material moved, get away from there, I'll be able to probably go back in there a little bit with a scraper and get rid of some of those ripples. It's just a place that's kind of a little bit more difficult in some ways, because I can't seem to get the quite as light of a touch as what I would like on it. We're still plenty thick in there, so I might try it one more time and try and keep my touch as light as possible. It looks like it did better. Probably still not perfect. Biggest concern is that we don't have any real big areas of torn grain or anything like that. Probably should go in here and make a cut with the gouge. You won't be able to see it, but I got a white streak going around there at the rim where the parting tool cut. So I'm just going to recut that a little bit straight in, just with the gouge, and let it run into no man's land, which means is where it hits the curve. And do not touch that while it's spinning, because this right now is a razor blade. It will slice you very quickly. I took care of that. It still shows up a little bit white, but that's okay. Another thing, we know we're going to get rid of those edges, so I'm just going to touch the gouge to them. Just touch them. The rest will be done with sandpaper. Now we can proceed. Well, I'm fairly straight across at this point, dropping down a little bit as I go. You can leave that alone. The other thing, we can use the back of the heel to get rid of them chips. As soon as you create anything that's curved inward like that, chips stay inside the bowl. So it makes it a little bit more challenging. Also makes it more challenging when you sand them too. So now we're still plenty thick out in this area. We're good down to about this rim, this area in there. We're definitely plenty thick down in there. So we'll go back to our cleaner cutting gouge. We'll straighten that area up. We're nowhere near deep enough yet. So we can work on our next area to get the curve right. That feels pretty good. Probably could be a little thinner, maybe. I don't know. We do have actually a gauge that'll measure that if I wanted to. Oh, yeah. Let's do like a half an inch thick right there. So we do need to go a little bit further back, probably starting up in this area. That would be, yeah. It's all about making it right from the start. It becomes very difficult to come back up to that area. And cut. That is definitely the difference on making this type of a shape. There we go. Now we're cooking. Rather than sort of a traditional bowl shape. Do have a little bit of an area up here that's not. I got a ridge in there, but that there again, that ridge will stand out quickly. It's the thing of no torn or disturbed grain. So if I go over there, we're getting closer to the bottom than what you would ever think you were. Drop tool rest just a bit. As we're getting to the point where we need to get to center. See if I can shed a little bit better light on the situation. It gives me a shadow, but I may end up using a scraper on this one, a bowl scraper probably. There again, when you get a little on the deeper side, versus this started out at about 3 inches thick, and we really didn't lose hardly any of the 3 inches. So it's going to make it very difficult for me, I think, to get in there. We're going to try, but it may not allow me to make that curve that I want. So I'm going to get a big heavy cut when I did that. Stopping and looking is free, so do lots of it, is my opinion. That's the way I was taught from day one. Still plenty thick down there, so we're in good shape. Curve needs to come back up into here and go a little bit deeper. At least that's what my fat little fingers say. We can always take more off, but we can't. It's a little hard to put it back. Feels better. Feels like if we just round that off down there, I think we'll be good. You think? It's not in a handle. I think we'll just put the big bowl scraper on there and kind of be lazy. I don't know. A lot of people would say that was lazy, but when you watch the likes of Richard Raffin, that's been doing this a very, very long time, he would probably be pretty quick to tell you that no point in not using the scraper in there and making life a little easier. And we do have a nice big one. But as before, like I say, the chips do not go out, so you got to stop a lot when you're doing this type of a shape. Definitely got a little bit of a lump yet in the middle. I also need to clean up out here. I see lots of people that are brave enough to reach up here. That just looks like a place that fingers are going to get seriously smacked. Little ridge right there. Looks like our radius will work. Feels pretty good. Still feels as though I left a little flat. That's the one hang up as far as I'm concerned with the scraper, is there's a little bit of disturbed grain in there in the bottom. So I'm going to get the curve right. And then I will go resharpen that one of those gouges. Maybe give it a tiny bit different angle so that I can make the curve easier. I think we're there for that part. It's not super, like I say, it's not super thin. Not going for super thin. It's probably 3/8 of an inch thick. But it's to me, it's sort of a utility kind of a bowl. So making it paper thin just means that somebody will be less likely to actually use it for what it's designed for. Be a little, Little bowl, you might want to put some nuts or M&Ms or something like that in. So, eeny, meeny, miny, moo. I have two different flute configurations on these. The black dot in the bottom. What shows up black? Shouldn't be a black. There's a little bit of little nub sticking up right directly in the bottom. Probably the black knot you're seeing is a shadow, I would think. But right here, right there is some disturbed grain. It's disturbed across the center as well. So I'm gonna go over here and sharpen. Yeah, that's what I would have figured it was. So I'm gonna go sharpen these two. Yeah, that's shadows like to show up. I don't necessarily have the exact right kind of setup on the light, especially for streaming. If I didn't wasn't streaming, I could use the big bright light. But when you're streaming, it doesn't work very well. I did find these on. I bought a 3D printer a couple weeks ago. Found some of these setup blocks. I'm working on trying to make my own so that I can maybe help out some other wood turners. This is somebody else's design, so I certainly can't print them and, what do you want to say, market them, sell them. That would be kind of rude. Could get you in trouble too. I'm gonna drop the bevel and shorten it up first, and then we'll go over it and sharpen it. Very, very light touch when you do this, sharpening by hand. And that's going to give us 1/8 of an inch or less. Light blocking sharpening. I don't have a camera that's going to zoom in there anyhow. Really. I'm going to shorten the bevel again on this one. I moved the platform up a little bit. It's going to give us a little bit steeper of an angle on the nose. Now that bevel, the bevel on this one, I'll show you when I get back over here. One's at about an 1/8. The other one is probably closer to a 1/16. So back over to here. Don't know if it'll really show very well. Oh, yeah, my big head in the road. Yeah, okay. Well, unfortunately, the grinder actually gets moved back and forth on the workbench. I didn't understand what you were saying, but yes, I could have done that. I could have taken the visor off. I don't really need that to grind. They are CBN wheels. They're not going to explode on me or any such things. My apologies. Okay, so what we're going to do is come back up here. We'll make one cut, pretty much top to bottom. Like I say, the bevel, you got to disregard that bevel. The actual cutting bevel is very, very short. It's a little bit steeper than what it was. You can't necessarily see the handle, but the handle was way over there. And we go nice and slow. Gonna give us a little bit of chatter out here on this top end. But if we make one nice sort of a little lightweight pass, it doesn't really affect it how much it's removing, but I did not need to take much off. Just need to get it to go the whole way to the center. If I leave that, as you said earlier, a black little dot in the center, like I did right there, it's just leaving a tiny little nub sticking up, which disappears in about 2 seconds flat when the sandpaper touches it. I think we're clean now. I did leave some ripple lines up here. I was pushing a little bit too hard. So the inside we will start with 120 rather than 150, just because of those ripple lines. That'll make it disappear quicker. Trying to get a light in the right place and not show up in the middle of the camera. Get rid of some chips so I can move my dust collection thing. Same 2 3/8 sandpaper. This time I will switch out pads. I'll show you the difference between the two. This one, the black is the business end of it. This one has a radius corner. This one has straight corners. Um, don't rush into it because you undercut the paint in this. I'm getting better at it, but I still don't have quite the touch that I would like to have to get super. I mean, I'm getting a clean enough cut, but I can't do it without leaving some little bit of rippling lines in them. We want to set a little passes across center, and that's fine. And if you have the interest in doing any of the undercut stuff, do it on something bigger in size. Much easier. Not quite all of it going there yet. And if there's an area, like right in there, it's not necessarily cooperating. There's nothing says that we can't stand that little area without a spinning. That should be more than enough with 120. Just trying, all I was doing with the 120, the coarser grit, is just trying to get rid of any lumps and bumps and anything like that. It's the very top quarter of an inch or so. I probably will just sand that by hand. That way I'll have more success keeping it straight. I power sand that, chances are it won't be very straight. If we go from one side to the other, like I just did there, I sand it across that way, flipped over to the bottom part, come back this way. Pretty much about the same as if you sanded in two separate directions. Because on that side, it's putting the swirl marks are going down. On this side, the swirl marks are going up. So it creates like a cross pattern in there, which makes things disappear quickly. Yeah, the scraper I was using, that's homemade too. Pretty much most of my scrapers are homemade. I do have a couple sort of specialty ones that I bought years ago, but anymore it's just buy the steel from Amazon for very little bit of money compared to what it would cost for factory made, especially scrapers, put it that way. Some can take more work than others, but for the difference in the price tag on them, it's well worth the time and effort, I think. And we should be able to. I stop after this. This is 220. But at 120, 150, 180, and now on to 220. Stop and make sure, because up in here is where they'll show up. Much harder to get. That's the other problem of doing undercut rim is you get some scratches that are up underneath here that are much more difficult to remove. I think we got it pretty good. It is the inside of a bowl, but a lot of people have that attitude. I want the inside to be finished as well as the outside. I will use a shiny finish so it will show every little defect you can imagine. How well? Oh, I assume Albert, you're asking him. Yeah, 1 inch round nose cover would actually do very good for Halloween. I don't really have one that's truly a round nose. Another one of them things that's really is kind of on the should make list that really hasn't got done yet. You do have to keep one thing in mind with any of the traditional scrapers is it needs to be headed downhill a little bit, or it will have a tendency to grab. So I'll sand these flat areas by hand, just so I keep things nice and crisp and clean. I started with 220. That might not. Definitely want to keep the sandpaper moving rather quickly on this. Each another one of us U.S. guys. So that edge, I will go the whole way to 600. I hate to disappoint you, Al, but that probably won't mean a whole lot to him, seeing as how he's in probably northern or southern Australia, period. So it won't necessarily mean much. Okay, so that's our box part finished, or bowl part. This moment, I'm not going to put any finish on that. Even though this stuff is pretty dry, I did one a couple weeks ago and did the lid, and then this top rim decided it would move. It's still upstairs to be redone. So this one, I think I'll just leave it alone, but we will move on to the lid. See how I told you. That probably means as much to you as it would to me, but he's in Australia. How's that? Yeah. It would also be. mm, this is. Let's go back to there. This is a piece of maple. It has some curl to it. Just trying to figure out. The curl doesn't necessarily go the whole way through these pieces. This one looks like it might. We'll just go with that side and we'll figure that's the top. So just jam it up against the chuck. We're going to do basically the same maneuver as I did on the bottom of the bowl. Or I should say, I guess theoretically the top of the bowl, where I'll just uh, scribe a line out here. This is about 1 inch thick now, which is more than what we're going to need. So I'll mark a tenant carefully. Middle of nowhere. I like that. Middle of nowhere. What kind of what kind of an area is that? Is it? Are you in like a what do you want to call it? You want to call it an industrial area, farming area? I know there's a lot of area that they're raising livestock of some sort, cattle. As you can tell, we don't know. I don't know very much about Australia except some of the things that I've seen. And let's true up this outside first. Probably should not have gotten rid of that. It's a very small, very short tenon one there. And likewise, what one of the things I find fascinating about Australia, I am a retired truck driver, so I've watched some of the different series of that type of industry over there, where they're pulling those road trains. That just that just strikes my interest just because of what I did for a living. So a little cut from each side, just to clean this, get it down to a round, sort of. This piece should be plenty big. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we need a dimension across our bowl to the inside opening, which looks somewhere about there. If my eyes are going across the center, I'll leave it a little proud. Now we are going to get rid of the live center so I have better access. Oh, it sounds that way. Oh, that's cool. So this time we'll use the tool race. So that should be the inside of our bowl. Those things always go as they should be. So we have enough material. So I'm not really too super concerned. Switch back to our spindle guide. A little gentler on the cut. Go right in there at our little area that's going to be a tenon for the bowl. And we'll see how see yeah, squeak. That's going to have to go a lot deeper eventually. Just wanted to see whether I was. Huh, well, you do that about once every 10 times. Actually fits on the first try. It's quite snug of a fit. These cannot be not be a super snug fit because this is both side grain material, so they're going to move over the seasons. They'll increase our length. Also going to give it, it's got a little bit of a disc shape to it. Another kind of one of these places it's going to have to be cut cleanly. Very hard to sand in there. So I'm going to get rid of that edge before I touch it. I refer to that as the razor blade because when you're paying attention to other things, it it, it is. Okay, so now we're back to too thick. You're making an avocado out of wood? I'm going to assume that's what you're talking about. Okay, so now we're there. It wiggles, spins freely, of course. So it has a little bit of wiggle to it, which is what I'm after. Could also use a mechanical pencil where I don't necessarily touch the lead to the other piece, even though I still did. So there's the outside shape of our lid or our bowl. So I don't like, still kind of struggling with a great design on something like that. So I have a tendency to leave just a little bit of overhang on them. To me, I don't think they look right if they have a bunch of overhang on them. But now, for right now, we got to do something with that section in there. We also need a bit of a recess in there to grip onto to be able to turn the outside. Problem with making scrapers is you end up making too many of them. Point, point. I'm looking for one that's already out. Never mind. I like the one that Richard Raffin and them talk about as a shear scraper. You guys should have yelled at me. I could have switched over to there so you could actually see what the heck we're doing. Have to yell at me because I get sort of get involved in what I'm doing and I forget the part of somebody else might be actually trying to watch what I'm doing. So we'll flatten this out. Nice gentle touch. And yes, this stuff has some curl to it, so as I figured, curly wood does not necessarily scrape cleanly. Now it will if I flip it up on its side and use it as a shear scraper, but at this point all I'm interested in is what for dimension of a recess, because we have a lot of material there. So our recess could come way out. But it doesn't really have to. decision. Well, a better question than that. It's 4 and 8. That would, ooh, that would be interesting, but that's not usually how I do them. Probably could use actually the chuck that's on there right now. If it wasn't lazy, I could take that one off and check. We're going to look at this one first. And may end up doing that anyhow. So I'm going to use a recess on this part rather than a tenon. So if I close the jaws down almost to nothing and then measure it, that once again won't leave us any marks. I think that's going to be big enough. This is one of the few times that it doesn't have to be super exact, because it's going to be a recess, and it's going to be a very small recess to go with it. But it will need a bit of a flat because of the jaws. So I use my parting tool that's rounded at an angle which actually matches the dovetail jaws. It's also about 8 millimeters wide, which is about the thickness of the jaws, I think. A little bit shy of that. A little bit more than that, about that much. I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. Now, if you really want to sort of cheat, it's what some people would call it. I call it the man with too many tools. Lots of toys. So we can run 1, 2, 3. We might actually get 4 in there. Let's see. So mark it. Stick the right hand point in. Rotate to mark the next one. These all need to be marked. If you ever use any of the beading tools and try and make multiple beads in the same plane, you need to mark a bunch of them together. I think that'll work. Lots of speed for these. They'll cut much, much cleaner. They are nothing but really nothing but a scraper. As long as they're sharp. This is also why you have to mark them, because you never get in there beside one that's existing. So when you mark them all, then you have a solid place to go in. And I figured as much. We're going to have to drop that down just a little bit more. Also going to do something with that little area out there. So might as well do that. I just sort of drop that down a little bit so that it doesn't necessarily stick out and make it look dumb. And hopefully we don't have to, we may end up having to recut a little bit of this pennant too. Once again, it doesn't need to be a real long tennant to sit into that bowl. We'll sink it down a little bit. And of course, we're going to have to redo our line, but that's okay. You know about where it's going to be. Now, so that I don't get carried away and look stupid at the end, we're going to make sure it's still plenty loose. This is probably a little bit too much of an abrupt curve when I come in there and curved out. That's a little abrupt. So I'll just flatten that area out a little bit. Right into the corner in both directions. So that we have a nice crisp clean corner in there and long enough to sit down in the bowl part. Making sure it's not too loose, too tight. Well, too loose we have to, well, it's plenty loose. Which I've learned with these, when you think it's too loose, it's probably not. It could be, in this case here, it is a little looser than what I would like. Because these things move a lot with the changes of humidity and seasons. I'm going to drop it down another 16th of an inch maybe, something like that. Clean up the cut. Both ways. One more fit and we should be good. It was a little sloppier than what I would. It's still fairly sloppy, but that's okay. I'd rather have sloppy. Nobody will know the difference. They'll certainly know the difference if it's too tight and the changes of the season causes you to have a major issue. So we'll go back in here. And now our little tiny little recess is going right up underneath that bead. And like I say, it is rather tiny. We're talking about a 16th of an inch. According to Australian friends, you're looking at about 1 millimeter or so underneath that rim. The only thing that we need to be concerned about is that it's flat enough out here or slightly concave that allows that jaw to go up underneath that area. And we can just get rid of this part. Make this a little bit of a dome. And certainly also come out closer to this little area out here as well, because it doesn't need much out there to sit on. Come, course, also if you wanted to, you could possibly put some texture in there if you wanted to. Not the world's greatest on the texture end of it. I do a lot with my bottom or the tops that I make with texture, but to do it on something else, I have a tendency not to bother with it much. Look at our little recess area. It looks good. Does look kind of plain in there though. I'll think about that a minute. We're gonna sand that up. We might just up and put a little texture in the middle of that. It still wasn't cut as cleanly as I would like it in there. Guess I really didn't need to sand out there yet. We got to get this a little bit closer to fitting the way I want it to. That's going to require a bit more sanding out there. But since you cut the line off, so we know where we know where the outside of the bowl is going to be, which is always a plus to know that because we're going to sand away. We're going to cut some of this away right off the bat. It's going to leave us about 1/8 of an inch. Give it a nice little tiny round over. That should be good to go, I think. I could recut that. It would have been easier to take the black line off. Yes. A little easier to cut it off than it is to sand it off. A fresh bit of sandpaper on the end. All I did, I have a pair of scissors that'll cut sandpaper without dulling them very quickly. That's what it looks like I'm playing around. I got it to curve going the wrong direction. Oh no, I was looking at the wrong thing. That's why. Okay. So that'll give us a little bit of an overhang. Kind of determined that I don't really want a big overhang on. Good. We'll get our little area. You too, Al. Thanks for stopping by. A little fuzzy back in the corner. So once I get to about 320 or 400 is when I will touch these beads. They generally be cut clean enough that you really don't have to do much to them. So let's try a little bit of the texture. Use a little small sorbet one. Speed is definitely critical when you're using these, as in very, very slowly. I can get my little flower in the middle. Perfect. That's what I was looking for. And I think I'll just give this some simple kind of texture. Just give it some rings to give it a little character. And they should be little points. Yep, there we go. Hopefully you can see that relatively well. Now that we did that, we're also going to sand with 400. We'll sand over them, especially over them. They will leave a fairly rough surface. You can just use one of those non-woven pads over them, which is what I would do with them whenever I do the tops. Tops would actually get colored with markers. This we're not coloring. I don't like that. I have a bit of a line right there. Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it alone. The more I play with it, the worse I'll get it to be. So that should be good. Switch chucks. Just kind of keeps keeps other wood turners guessing on how you held the thing. That's kind of my philosophy on them. They're holding the center. You're gonna go out nice solid grip. Don't need the dust collector running. And we should also be able to go to there. Widen that one out a bit. And we'll move this way. Just a little bit. Big old hairy hose out of the road. Now we can take this bit down to this bit down here. First order of business. We're going to shape. We're going to give us sort of an OG shape, but we need to get rid of this material out here. Actually, we probably would be better off if we go other direction or just not go the whole way out. Go in two directions would probably be better yet. This does have some curl to it, so that's definitely not necessarily friendly to doing things you might be able to get away with in something else. Okay. Or, and we trim that down. I think before we get carried away, we're going to get the bowl. We're going to sit it on the bowl and say, well, is that enough or is that too much? I think it looks okay. We're still not stuck in that position, so to speak. There should be enough room if I needed to. Still enough room in between the chuck and here that if I want to come back and trim that down a little bit more, I still could do that. But I don't, not really, I'm thinking that's not going to have to happen, I hope. I'll get this wrapped down. I sort of like a simple OG shape. The whole thing is already too thick for that. So we'll trim some of that down right off the bat. Be easier to see our shape develop. If you're so minded, you could space this out in about thirds, something like that. So we need about that area right there down into, it's not very well in thirds, but we're going to live with it. And using the swept back bowl guide, swept back ground bowl guide, it already has a curve to it. So we can use that as our gauge. We get down close to where we want to go. We're going to get a nice, light, gentle cut. Knock the corner off. We're also going to need a flat A little bit of a flat in the middle because this will get a little knob on it, of some sort. So a little bit of flat will take care of help that. Now, our other curve is going to go, we're going to say the flat is going to be about there. 50% would be out and about there. So we'll just sort of blend the curve starting here. Really, in order to make that curve, your body, I'm not over here looking. I am actually directly in line with this. My nose is kind of running right down the middle of it. That way I'll be able to see what I'm doing. See the curve, what does the curve develop? Not really concerned that I just left a couple ripples in there. I'm mainly after getting it to the right curvature that I want. Get out here on this outside edge, it's from the first half an inch of it in there, something like that, is kind of getting very thin. It does have some curl to it though. I will give it that. So, yeah, ruler, measure. Want this to be, could be a little bit smaller than that. It's about 3/4 of an inch. Let's see. And my millimeter friends, so it's now at about 17 mil, something like that, which is a little bit too much. I'm going to remove a little bit more material in here, like that. It's, like I say, at this point, I'm still going to leave that the way it is. I'll go back to my straight wing gouge, which has a very, very small bevel on it. And then we'll hopefully make one nice pass out across here. Keeping the little ripples to a minimum, hopefully. Something like that. It should be nice and cleanly cut now, pretty much. A little bit of an undulation in there, but that's okay. Also going to give it a tiny little bit of a flat right smack in the middle before I start sanding. If anything, it can be a little concave bit of an area. Something like that. Very small. Can even do a little shear scrape back. That should work. Picked up a little bit of grain right there. Not that big of a deal in a small piece. A little disturbed. I wouldn't say necessarily that it picked it up, but it definitely is not as smooth as it could be. So we'll go back to our more rigid pad. You didn't notice I like the power sander as much as I can. Thank you. Got ready to get new sandpaper for all these little discs too, but we don't need 120. for sure. Let's try it. Let's try starting at 180 once. Dust collection. Why did that not switch? Helps if I get the hose in the right place, though. Much easier to sand this curve. It's going forward rather than reverse. Or the radius, I should say, not the curve. The radius on the straight line. I should be better off if I get the tool rest off so I don't get my fingers in between. Just with our sandpaper, rather than trying to cut it, most likely we'll have a tendency to chip things up. I'm just going to take a couple seconds out here and get a new sandpaper. So 220, 320, and 400. Much better when you use dark sandpaper. Shows up quite nicely that there's still a little flat in the middle. I'm also going to drill a hole in that middle yet for the knob. To me, this is the easiest way to sand things, if you can. There's lots of people out there actually sand by hand, but to each his own. I'm inherently a little lazy when it comes to that. If I can power sand it, that's what I'm going to do. It's just quicker and easier. And I feel that I get a better result, generally. Okay, one last thing to do to the lid will be to drill a hole. For that, we need a 3/8 drill bit, which will be a Forstner drill bit. We've left quite a bit of material on the bottom. We did right now, we didn't leave that much. You should be able to go in about the depth of the head of the drill. At least that's my thought. Really don't want to hole any other side. So I'll probably go in just about that depth, which should be I don't know, probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 millimeters thick. And also, we're not locked into that yet, because we didn't drill yet. We drill into about there. It should be more than ample enough room. If we really wanted to, go the other way. Then poke out the other side. But my trusty rule calipers might actually measure that distance from center. So we still have quite a bit of distance there. I think I'm going to drill just a shade bit deeper. I'm not going to get super carried away, that's for sure. We already have too much work involved into it than to drill out the other side. So that's pretty much the lid complete. Dust collection goes away. And of course, the next part of the scenario was some sort of a little knob for the top. It'd be nice if it'd be the same material as the bottom, but I don't think, pretty sure that we don't have that availability because this was cut out of a log. I don't really have any of this kind of stock. So we go back to there. Then we have our progress so far. A nice little kind of a low profile type of a lid on it. It's plenty loose. We just need some sort of a knob on the top. Something like you could, I guess if you were so minded and wanted to, you could do a finial for something like that. Um, I view it as more of a piece that's going to be more utilitarian. I think that's a piece of black, something ebony maybe. I don't think I've ever bought any black wood. Definitely won't, or will it? Oh, yes it will. Come on. I'd rather have a different grip on it than that one. Well, without having to change jaws. I have 4 chucks for this lathe, but I change jaws quite often. I'm not spending more money just not to change jaws. Not that chuck can go. I can grab it, center point. Yeah, yeah, true. Very true. So, do we have that centered? Close enough, that's for sure. Good way of holding on something like that. Makes life easier. Short tool rest. Staying up plenty high because we will use my kind of favorite roughing tool for something like this. We'll see whether it likes it or not. It should because it's very hard. We use everybody's tools of not choice. We use our skew. You're still up on the top camera. Go down close to round. The round is fairly far back. Might as well go back a little further. Not quite round yet. This is the way I look at it. This is a kind of a cut that almost anybody can make because it's just a simple peeling cut. Just sliding along the tool rest. Although some of this wood gets on the tool rest and doesn't allow it to slide very well. This is okay. Now, still not round. It's okay. We'll live with that. A couple things we need to know. A drill bit. Our best bet is actually to measure the hole rather than the drill bit. So if I take my vernier calipers or whatever, put the inside into there, we'll lock them in place. Use a parting tool rather than the skew for that. Has a little wormhole there too. Always interesting. So we know it's pretty far down. Let's switch back over to there. See more what we're doing. So there it goes over. A little taper on the end. It's going to be some of the kind of wood that's going to make you cough. So we're too tight, but now we have a little spin. It gave me a little burnish line in there. We'll go down through our. It's also not going to be. It's not quite long enough right now. So I take a little bit more off. Need a little bit bigger of an area to work with. And when they're straight, remove the burnish line. Hopefully that fits. Still a bit on the tight side. And the other thing would be a good measurement to know is how deep it is. So that would be a measurement to the very bottom. So we could take it a little bit deeper, but in order to make it deeper, I'm actually going to use my spindle gouge, little small spindle gouge, 3/8 spindle gouge, and I'm going to undercut that right down into that corner. Now, since this is in hand, we'll just use that and carefully shrink this tenon down a little bit. I don't want that. I don't want that fit to be so hard that I have to force it on there because I want the glue to hold it. And we're still just a little bit too tight. It's still leaving a little burnish out there, but it is out there, and I did that with the spindle gouge. So I'm just going to touch the parting tool to it and remove that little bit right there. because I know how it works for me. When I do it with a spindle guide, I don't necessarily get out there not as far out as what I would like to. Also going to undercut this a bit more. Make sure I don't leave a ridge back there. I eventually get it too long. There we go. That's the fit we're looking for. See, by undercutting, it's going to land out there on that curved part. This is still probably way too big in diameter. Anyhow, so work on giving this a bit of a chamfer. And then all the rest of this should be strictly overhead, make more sense, especially if we bring in close, up close and personal. It's about as close as we want to get. I don't want to make somebody dizzy. I'll say that needs more yet. A little bit of farting around. Okay. That's about the diameter down there that we want, I think. So now we can work on making it shape. So this cove part, I'm going to say it's going to be probably back in about there. I'll make a little bit of a V cut so we have somewhere to go to. And then we just start shrinking it down. So also sort of take the shape of a little bit of a flame, or in my area, more of a Hershey's Kiss, which might not make much sense to you guys across the pond, but I can go right into that corner. Stop and make one more little look. Oh, whatever this stuff is, it's kind of affecting things. Okay, now we're too deep. It is bottoming out a little bit, so we'll just trim a little bit off of that end. I figured eventually I would get to that point. Okay, so you get Hershey's chocolate over there? Huh, okay. I thought maybe you did, but I wasn't sure that you would know that term. Is that too long? No, it's not too long. My undercut is not deep enough. Costco's over there too? Wow, okay, cool. I don't know why that would surprise me. That a lot of that stuff is pretty much worldwide. There we go. That's what the issue was. I think a little bit smaller of a chamfer, I think. I think I'm gonna like that. Yes, that's better. That chamfer length now is probably down to about an eighth of an inch, something along those lines. I think that'll work. So now all we have to do is put sort of a Hershey Kiss top to it. That's way too big in diameter. So we're going to drop the diameter down considerably. That'll probably still be too big, but we're gonna work it with it from there. We'll make our curve nice and neat into that base first. Nice, yeah, wow. Nice clean, crisp corner. And start making the sweep. Small cut. So before I get carried away, there's one area that's will become very difficult to sand, and that's this little flat down here on the bottom, as well as some of this cove. So I'll touch both of them up. Whatever this it's cutting, it's so really cutting so cleanly that that was 320, this is 400. 400, I'm going to knock that little sharp razor blade off. On the inside, I'm going to reset underneath. Just touch that a little bit, touch that edge so it's not quite that sharp. And then that's all we should need to have to sand at this point. And I took a little bit too much material off behind there. Starting to want to talk to me a little bit. It just needs a little bit of rounding over here. Let me go that way. That's more the shape. Not that it cut it cleanly as I should have. I'm not totally concerned. Now you're not going to be able to go back there and cut right at the moment. So we'll just sort of break this free. Sorry for the hand in the rear, but I did want to catch it. I don't want to chase it. Okay. So now we have a general shape, but we're still not locked into our shape. I'll show you here in a minute. Like I say, this really should come in closer. I think probably made it a little bit too long. Still working on. I saw somebody else do some of these, and I thought it was a really kind of a neat little design, I guess you would call it. So now we have the issue of how do we hold that? Is this piece big enough? Get the dust out of there first. Try that. That'll work. Actually, I think it even has a 3/8 hole in it, which is, huh, we might get lucky. That one actually has, I know that has the 3/8 inch hole in it, so it's more than deep enough. We'll try it, see if it'll hold it. If not, I'll trim this back further, drill a 3/8 hole the whole way through, and I'll slice it with the bandsaw. It'll squeeze. Just a, it's a really simple, easy way to hold little pieces. And it works really well, quite well. It's not very flat. So flatten that a bit. We're also going to chamfer it down. So it's down more the diameter of what we're working with. Seems to help that situation a little bit. Also leaving the fuzzies in there. That's going to twist on there pretty hard. So it should be more than a secure enough grip. I blow my nose. This stuff's make whatever. I want to say this is some sort of an ebony that I got somewhere. Definitely not very cooperative to the nose. So now we should be able to, keyword is should. I won't guarantee it won't go flying. If it does, then we will go to plan B. Doesn't look like it's spinning totally true. But the bottom line is the only people that's going to know that is somebody that's actually watching one here. Because it won't show. Yeah, it's not going to hold it. Not going to hold it. It's going to allow it to wobble. So let's just cut this down. Bit of extra messing around. How you doing, Sid? Are you goofing off at work today? 'Cause I think I heard you were working today. Once again, a little chamfer, a little bit of a flat for it to sit on. Okay, now I need my drill bit back. Got it there. I'm not gonna go down that road. Well, that sounds like a fun adventure too. You have your own gallery? That would be interesting. Except that mean I'd have to actually do some work, but maybe. That's sort of another one of our bit of an adventure that we are going on, my wife and I. That's something that's not really allowed? Is that what you're trying to say? Okay, so what I've done, so I cut it down further. It just fit earlier into that hole that we drilled, but it's not really tight enough. And you can't prove it by that, but not quite. Must be a little burr in there or something. Should have checked that a little closer. Now, here in the States, that would be something I necessarily couldn't necessarily do. Got a little burr inside that. A little place it's there you go. It it can't hurt. That's the way I always look at it. You can't hurt anything like that. So wonders of the Forstner bit. It left a ridge standing up in there. It doesn't want to allow this little knob to go in. So same 3/8 hole that just would have been fit into the lid. This is still really tight in there for some reason, but that's good because we want it tight. The hole goes the whole way through the piece. Show you on the other end. The hole goes the whole way through. I cut a slot in it with the bandsaw with the grain. So now I put the slot in between the jaws. As I squeeze that down, it squeezes this tighter yet. Whether it spins true on this one is going to be another scenario. No. You can mess around with it a little bit if you want. A lot of times they usually will spin pretty true. Since I had to mess around with that hole, it may not, but like I said to Reese, the only person that's going to know is the person that's actually sitting here watching it being done, because we'll just turn it true to this axis, so it doesn't really matter. Nice light cuts. Hopefully it doesn't fly off. As tight as what it is, it shouldn't. But we can read through the whole thing. And let's finish out here first. Nope. Now this is an ebony. That's one thing I'm pretty sure of. Even though I said I wasn't totally sure, but I knew I bought some at a wood turning symposium many, many moons ago. Okay. So my screwing around, I actually knocked it a little bit further off axis at the start than it was. But like I say, you never know. You can't get excited about that because we're going to sand it and you won't know the difference. Well, I'm not quite sure how it knocked it off axis a little bit. Oh, so now it's actually, now it decided it should be a little bit loose. So we'll just push it back in as best we can. This jam piece can actually be smaller yet, or thinner in this direction back here. It's actually a very, very simple and easy way of doing them. How I did a whole bunch of my Christmas ornaments the same way. They actually work much better than what these are. Like I say, once we set it up, even though it's still not running true, it's kind of irrelevant. Except out there on the end. You can see how far is actually quite, since I turned that last little bit on it, tried to pull it out. But it really doesn't make any difference. The sandpaper just bounces up over top of everything anyhow. And I'll sand it very smoothly. Whereas I guess if you were one of them people that like to do the offset turning or something like that, this would be another form of offset turning. Except it's not going to show that it has an offset to it. So use a paper towel to clean the dust off. More importantly, the grit. That's one of them wise men told me that, and it does work. Something that I've sort of adopted and I try and do it very faithfully, especially when I'm sanding by hand like this. If you don't get rid of that, it's always leaving a bit of grit behind. So you don't want to go on to the next grit and all of a sudden you put in the last grit scratches. So to speak. So that was going to 320, 400. Worry about that one we're done, I'll knock that point, super sharp point off the tip. We can also sand with the grain out here on this tip, which means that thing that it's not running true, super true, won't make really won't make any difference because now we've sanded with the grain. We've gotten rid of any of those little undulation kind of the scratches that may not have gotten sanded as well whenever we were sanding with it not being running perfectly true. Tiny bit of work, not drastic. Lastly, since this is sanded by hand, I generally will go to 600 when I sand by hand, just to keep the scratches smaller. And I'll break that razor blade sharp edge back there, as well as this razor blade edge that's probably going to dig right through my sandpaper. Try to. Just want it to be sharp enough, round enough, if that makes any sense. A little bit of final sand with the grain kind of a situation. And that should be it. Last little clean off. Now it wanted to come out, but now it probably won't come out. Is ideally what I would like to do. Yeah. So that's why the hole is a hole. One of the reasons the hole is the whole way through. So I put the chuck key in there, which fits. Tap it down on the bench on the lathe, and now it pops it free through the piece. But I also want to finish it while I'm here. So I'm going to put it back in. Not really super close. Enough to hold it. And once again, it doesn't matter that it's not going to spin true, because it's definitely not going to. Just enough of a grip, and then I'll put a little bit of finish on that. And I think that's where we're going to call it a night, an evening, put it that way. I know it's daytime for you guys, but it's evening for me, so just so we'll go back to my normal finish, and the whole thing will get finished with this. Actually, I could do the lid probably, or at least one side of the lid. This is the 3408, available in Australia, unless somebody decided you're going to be a distributor, which I doubt because shipping would probably be too expensive just to even get it there, I would assume. Either one of you ever try and ship anything to the U.S.? Not all right. Now for me, it'll probably be a snack and a beer. This is my super simple finish. One coat. This will get buffed after it cures, which is 24 hours. In this case, yeah, well, yeah, I'll buff this before I actually put it on the piece. Here, most likely. That gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. You mean the U.S. to you? I figured that much. I just ordered. Guess that was yesterday, last evening. I guess it was. I ordered another round of the Vonex polishing compound. That comes out of the UK. Oh yeah, yeah. You can't. I wasn't really referring to wood. Well, yeah, you would. Yes. Well, that's. I'm a distributor of this finishing super glue. Of course, that's made in the U.S., but the Vonex is made over in somewhere over in the UK, England area, something like that. And I get 10 bars at a time because if it gets to be too heavy, then the shipping is super ridiculous. Um, but I just ordered some, like I say, yesterday. The price of the product went up a tiny bit, but the shipping used to be like about 50 bucks each way. The product was about 50 and the shipping was about the same. There's our little Hershey Kiss top. It's really kind of a simple, I think it's a simple little design. I think it's kind of nice, but um, like I say, when I ordered it last night, why, it's now, the product was still right around, I don't know, this the product was 60 couple US, and the shipping was also like 63 US, so we probably need to back up a bit. There we go. Semi-finished piece. The bowl and the lid don't have any of the finish on. It will get the same finish as the rest, as all the rest. I could actually do the lid. That would make sense. The bowl part I should do. While I'm finishing things, should do both of them. It's which ones I used? That one. I think it's well. That's why I say that's why I'm going to finish the lid. See whether it shows up well. It may not because it's going to be a little bit more of a matte finish at this particular second. And we'll want to go to there. Yeah, that'll work. Glove back on. Yes, sir. Yep. I have I have two of the one of the 100s and three of the 120s. Yeah, I sort of got involved in teaching some wood turning classes at our woodcraft store that's close to me. Don't know whether you have any of those over that in your neighborhood, but we do around here. Um, and the owner, they were dealing with Nova chucks or Nova products and chucks, of course. Um, And of course now Nova has sort of at least went out of business in the U.S. And he just asked me the other, well, it was a couple of months ago. He asked me about that. He's like, "Well, what truck do you like?" And I'm like, "Well, there's only, in my opinion, there's only one, and that would be the Vic Mark." Ah, there we go. I can get rid of my glove. There is no comparison, in my opinion. Vic Mark's the only way to go. I just wish I just, actually, I was doing some research for the store owner because he asked me about it again. And I'm like, well, let me look into it a little bit and I'll see. It's well worth the money to order the Vic Mark. There, that's in a little closer. You can see this. There we go. See the stripes as we turn. This looks really kind of neat if you dye it, but since the base of it's going to be sort of a little bit, it will turn more of a dark reddish brown, something like that. I can show you what the inside's going to finish up like. One short second. Um, no. You buy them cheaper than I do. Mm. So when I was on their website, I'm like, they have stuff on sale. And from what I could remember, a lot of the chuck jaws that I was looking at were probably $10 to $15 cheaper than what I could buy them here, which really makes sense because I mean somebody over here, Craft Supplies is one of the people that carry them, which is obviously where the new ones that I bought came from. Guess we got to back up a bit. I managed to find two of them at a sale of a person that I'm not sure whether that person passed away or just quit turning or whatever. It was a public kind of a sale. And I bought two of the VM 120s at the sale for, I want to say about 140 or $150 a piece, both of which had jaws on them. One had a 4-inch set of jaws on, the other one had the standard jaws on them. So it was still a savings because the VM100 that I use on this lathe is probably, I'm going to say 15 or 16 years old and has never caused me a bit of trouble. Just the occasional blow the dust out of it. And like I say, I've been very, very happy with it. So I've kind of stuck with it. It would be kind of nice in some ways to be one of those people that likes to spend a ton of money on that stuff and just keep buying new chucks for the different size jaws you have. But my 120s pretty much have three different jaws jaw sets on them since I have three of them. So that gets me through pretty much everything else. The 100, I either use the standard jaws or um, the shark jaws on that. So that's what that. This is Bradford pear. I know something you guys don't have down there. I don't think. What, having more chucks have the same number of chucks? Yeah, yeah. Well, I have two of them, but okay. Check. Yeah, you're ahead of me. Like I said, I have three and two. Actually, one of the yeah, three and two. One of the 100s is for a mini lathe, a little Jet 1221. Right. I was, when it comes right down to it, I don't. The only one, the VM 100, I generally is going to switch between the standard jaws and the shark jaws. Um, the shark jaws are the bigger. I forget the millimeters, but it's the bigger set of shark jaws. Well, there's nothing wrong if it's the Vic mark. There's nothing wrong with that 75 millimeters. Yeah, well, um, I just retired in October, so the plan was to sort of travel and have a small lathe to go along and travel with and things such as that. And since I am actually a Woodcraft employee, I get to buy it cheaper. Okay. Okay. So there we go. Hopefully we get this finished up this week. The inside of this, probably will use some of the fine abrasive paste on the inside. It's just kind of a little bit easier than buffing. I still need to, come tomorrow, I can actually put that on a vacuum chuck if I have time tomorrow. Put that on a vacuum chuck and clean up little, this area down here because I still don't have that down. Calipers quite set, quite small enough. It leaves teeny tiny little V's right up against the shoulder of my bowl. So I mean that'll have to be if I put it on a vacuum chuck or something along those lines. I think this is too small for the either one. Sometimes you can get away with doing that. I'm here every Sunday night, man. I have been doing really good on that. I haven't missed any Sunday nights in quite a while. No. Well, maybe. So that would be another way, I guess. It's not really a great way of doing it because that's going to leave marks on the inside if I did it that way. The vacuum chuck will do a better job without leaving marks. Because I go from that size jaw up to, I think Vetmark considers them 4 inches, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly how some of them are measured. I know they're measured in millimeters, but I find that to be too much like work. It does work. I am not going to say that it doesn't. Um, it just means you have to have a bunch of stuff laying around that you would be able to make a jam chuck for that. I mean, there's a lot of wood turners out there that would that's how they would finish it. A lot of demonstrators would finish it the same way, putting that on some sort of a jam chuck. But Vic Marcus OD at Perfect Circle. Okay, so interesting to know. So this bigger one that I have would be 100 and that would be in millimeters, correct? Yes. So like 127, 28 mil, something like that. Versus the other guy, 85 and probably 60 something. Okay. Sounds good. That's the same sale, which have never been on the lathe. It's too much trouble to get them out. Is one, let me see, that grips 8 to 9 1/8 inches inside. It's huge. I put them on once right after I got them. I'm like, and the only reason I bought them is I think I paid, I want to say $40 or $50 for them. And there was a guy there that was trying to buy a bunch of this stuff, and he wanted to get everything for practically nothing. So I'm like, I probably maybe not ever need them, but if I need them, then I have them. Um, but like I say, I mean, they're huge. I mean, 8 inches in diameter. I mean, you're talking about gripping something that big. Um, but might have a use for them someday, and I'll have them. And the price was right, so we do some things that not necessarily the best move, I guess you would say, but it is what it is. So, but at that note, we are going to call it an evening, and I appreciate you Aussies showing up. Um, like I say, I'm here Sunday evenings, 6 o'clock my time. I don't know what you're saying is now about noon, so it would be about 10 a.m. something like your time, something like that for you guys. Um, so until next week, you all have a wonderful week and stay safe in your shops. And we'll see you then.